Okay, let's start with making a geometry node and rename it to procedural city. Okay, so you have a procedural city. Dive in, delete the file node, and let's drop down a grid where we are going to lay down the city. So a grid, let's make the size huge, 70 by 70, and we will have 30 rows by 30 rows. Okay. Right in the center we have a 70 meter by 70 meter square grid with 30 by 30 rows and columns. Okay, so I'll just rename this to city base. Okay, then we create a box where it will be for the building. We leave it as a default size. Then we use a transform node to rescale it, maybe to a height of 5 meters. Okay, that's our building. Okay, now just to make it a bit smaller in the depth, maybe we'll scale it down to 0.4 in the X. Okay, then we have another transform node to just bring it to floor level or ground level. So we use this expression minus y min. Okay, minus y min. Any problems? No? Good. Okay, next. So the idea is we're going to copy the buildings onto this grid of ours, right? So if we don't format the grid, it's going to copy to every single point. Right now, you may remember that we will need to set up the normals. Okay, so drop down a point node, the old point node. So we set up the normals for copying. So after you drop down the point node, say add normal. Yeah, old. Add normal. Then you need to delete the channels, because you need to delete the expressions that are already there. If not, it's quite difficult to change it. So change the normals. We'll make the normals along the Z. 0, 0, 1. So add normal and then delete channels, then change to 0, 0, 1. Okay, we want the normals along the Z. Here, this one. Here, change that to 0, 0, 1. Got that? Now this because when you do a copy, later when we add a copy node, you will align the model's z-axis to its normal. Okay, let's say this is the grid's normal, and this is the z-axis of the model. So you will align these two axes when it does the copying. Then your building will be upright. Okay, so let's try that. Put down a copy stamp, copy stamp. Okay, left hand side is your object that you want to copy, and right hand side is your template or the surface or the points that you want to copy to. So if you set up the normals correctly, as I said, right, because if we look at the normals, okay, I'm displaying the point node and templating the copy, the result. So if I show the point normals, looking at the point normals, let's make the guides, the normal guide a bit longer. Okay, so if you look at the normals on the grid, so I purposely set it up such that the normal is pointing along the Z axis, right? Look at the Z axis. So at the same time, the models or the buildings Z axis is actually this way. So when you do a copy, you align the normal with the Z. So if I don't have that, if let's say I disable this point setup, when you do the copying, your building will be lying on the floor, okay, which is not what we want, right? Of course, you can do this and then after that you do a rotation, etc. So it's a bit more tedious, right? So if you set up the normal properly and you do the copying, it's going to sit nicely. Okay. So of course we don't intend to have buildings in every single point. So I'm just trying this out to show you the purpose of setting up the normals. So what we'll do is we are going to paint in the place that we want to have the buildings and the place that we want to have the roads. So in the middle, between the point and the grid, so drop down attribute create. So we're going to create an attribute called roads. Okay, we're going to change the name of the attribute to roads, R-O-D-S. Okay, so attribute create roads, and then change the name. Instead of attribute 1, change it to roads. So we are going to apply this attribute roads to every single point on the grid. Okay, every single point on the grid will have this extra attribute called roads. Okay, if you check the geometry spreadsheet, you will see that when you display attribute create roads, you will see that every one of these points, okay, remember we have about 900 points because it's 30 by 30 grid, and each one of them has an attribute created called roads, and right now the value is 0 because we set up the value here to be 0. Okay. So next we are going to, instead of applying the value, we're going to paint it. Okay, so paint the roads. So it's a paint node. After the grid, we put a attribute create roads. Right, leave the value at 0. Then now we're going to paint it in. Now, if you don't change anything on the paint node, you are painting colors. So right now, instead of painting colors, we want to paint the attribute. So you need to switch on this override color. Check this box. And then change the CD, which is color, change it to roads. Just as you spelled it above. If you spell it capital R-O-A-D-S, then you need to follow the same way. Alright? So this name must match what you have created above. Okay? So when you select paint roads and display it, it doesn't show any change. Now to turn on the tool to do the painting, you must select this icon on the left hand side. Okay, that's the handle. Okay, so whatever node that you have, if you switch this on, you will get the tool associated with that node. So remember, you can change the size of the brush with the scroll. Now immediately when you select the handle, it will turn purple because that's the default display. Right? Okay. Then let's paint in the roads. For example, let's maybe create something like this. Okay. Now the idea is wherever you paint is the attribute for roads, and therefore you won't have buildings laid there. Okay, so let's make one with something like this maybe. Okay, if you want to erase, it's middle mouse, middle mouse, you hold down, you will erase. Got that? The brush size, remember I said you can change the brush size with your scroll. Okay. Erase middle mouse and brush. Now for any brush function in Houdini, right, you can actually right click and you can change the setting for the operation of the left mouse, the middle mouse, and the brush shape. Okay, you can pick up colors, you can smooth, you can erase changes. Got it? You're there? Are you sure you're here? Okay, so maybe I'll paint another spot here. Got that? Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to group expression, group by expression. After the painting of the nodes, the roads, we're going to drop down a node called group expression. So we're going to group by expression. So what's the expression? Okay, first let's name the group. So maybe let's call this group called roads group. Roads group. Okay, so what's the vex expression? It's at roads greater than 0. Okay, wherever you painted, okay, change the group type to points. Then you will show some selection. Alright, so what I did was I dropped down a group expression node, changed the name to roads group, and this is the expression and the group type. Okay, because this is a group of points. Okay, just now we painted roads on points. Okay, when you do that, you should see on your display, on your viewport, you should see that it has been selected. The points that are yellow are the points that have a road attribute which is greater than 0. Okay, that's what the expression is doing. It's selecting all the roads, all the points that have this attribute greater than 0. I can't tell from here. Okay, so if you, okay, once you if you display your pane roads, now if you turn on your geometry spreadsheet, right, and you scroll down, scroll through, you should see that everywhere that you have painted, you have some value which is non-zero. Alright. So what it's doing is here is actually going through each and every single point, right, and checking, is it greater than 0, is it positive, then you will select it. Okay, Brendan? No? Really? Okay. Just see points. Don't worry. Means it's working. Okay, make sure you are not seeing in wireframe mode. Okay, fat wire shader is fine. Okay, so then the next thing is, what do we do with these roads? We're going to delete the roads. So drop down a delete node. Okay. So if you just change the name, nothing happens. You need to select the roads group and delete the points. Yeah. Change the entity to points. Okay, remember the name of the group. The name of the group is roads group. So now we are saying delete roads group. Then you delete all the points. Okay, all the points that you have painted. Okay, so make sure you change the group name at the top there. If you're afraid you spell it wrongly, you can click on this down arrow to select the group so that you don't accidentally spell it wrongly. Okay, and then make sure the points is selected instead of primitives, and then the rest are the default. Okay, so with that deleted, then when you copy your buildings, it only appears at the places where the roads were not drawn. Oh, have it? Okay, make sure you save your file at this point. It's a good place to save. Right, save it into the folder where you have the images that I asked you to copy. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to focus on the buildings now. Okay, the buildings look kind of plain, so we are going to make a variation in the size. Okay, and apply some textures on it. Okay, the first thing we'll do is now we're going to prepare two surfaces as the front wall. So we are going to say that if you display just one building, display that one building, focus on it, and then you switch on the primitive display. Right, switch on the primitive display. Sorry, primitive number display. Right, this one here. You notice that the white wall, the white side of the wall is number 1. Okay, number 1 and number 3. So we will group that. Group. Okay, we'll call it front walls. Okay, front walls. Okay, drop down a group node, group create, and then in the base group you key in number 1 and space 3. 1 space 3. So that will select the primitive 1 and primitive 3 and put it into this group called front walls. Okay, this is the building side. After the transform to ground, put in a group node, call the group front walls, and then leave it as primitive because we are selecting polygons primitive, and then the base group is 1 and 3. 1 space 3. Okay, we'll be using this later, this group later. Okay, now let's do some extrusion to make the tops a bit different. So change your tool to selection. Okay, let's select the top. Okay, with your mouse in the viewport, tap poly extrude. Poly extrude. Right, your mouse needs to be, first you need to select the top. The top means the roof, right? Then tap poly extrude. Poly extrude. Okay, so that allows you to pull the top polygon. Let's just pull it like this. Okay, you can always go back and change it later. So let's just shape it, make some interesting shapes at the top. Okay, after you've done the first extrusion, now what I want to do is I want to make something like a inset. Okay, so one more time after you do the first poly extrusion, tap another time, poly extrude. Pardon. You don't move. Okay, let me do that again. Now you select, first you must select, Brandon. You watch what I do on screen before you follow and anyhow click. Right, select this, then your mouse must be here. If your mouse is here, you will do something else. Right, mouse is here, tap poly extrude. Okay, then look what I'm doing. Look what I'm doing. Don't look at your screen. What I'm doing is not on your screen. Right, here you pull. Once you have the poly extrude already placed, then this handle will appear, and when you pull, it will create an extrusion. Okay. Right. Next, we are going to tap in another poly extrude because we want a second extrusion. Okay, but you need to, because we want to resize it, go over to the parameter side and then turn this on, transform extruded front. Okay, very important. When you do that, a new set of fields will appear, and then you can scale it in the X and the Y. Okay. Then one more extrusion. This time, instead of pulling up, you're going to push it down. So we have like a parapet. Okay. You can always go back to the previous extrusion and you can change the scale if you don't like the size. You don't? Oh. Okay, you got this? Now, then further on, let's create maybe some aircon compressors. Alright. So select the last poly extrude node. Okay, it should be still selected, that face, then tap poly extrude again. Now you don't have to keep keying in poly extrude because your history will show you all the nodes that you have used. Right? So again, we're going to transform the extruded front. We're going to scale it down. Right? You can also shift it with the handle. So maybe I'll make one somewhere there. And then poly extrude one more time and pull it up. And poly extrude again. Transform the extruded front. And so forth and so forth. Right? Okay, maybe we'll leave this one as it is. Right, so a few poly extrudes to just create some shapes. Now leave it to you later, you can actually extrude the sides as well. Okay, but first we are going to texture it. So after the last poly extrude, drop down a UV texture. Now you're going to UV texture by face. Okay, change the texture type to face, and then we're going to texture the front walls. So remember earlier on, we had created this group called front walls. So this is where we're going to use it. So 1 and 3. We're going to texture 1 and 3, the front walls by face. Okay, so right now there's no texture, there's no image yet. So if you want to have the image, one quick way of adding the texture is UV quick shade. So turn on UV, put down a UV quick shade. Okay, make sure UV quick shade also is applying the texture. Right now the default texture is this UV grid. Okay, make sure the group is also front walls at the top. Okay, both UV texture is front wall, UV quick shade is also front wall. Now this is where we're going to choose our image that I asked you to download from the reference drive. So instead of UV gray dot pic, okay, look for, if you had saved it in the same directory where you, same folder that you have your image, right? You should see img now there. If you had saved it in the proper place, if not, you have to go and look for it. Alright, so in future, this is what I would advise you to do. Okay, always set up your folder as such. So you have your heap file, or in this case, city in class, right? And whatever extra folders, img, for example, maybe you will have a OTL, then maybe you have a geo to save all your files, your geometry files. Okay, always do this. So have your heap file. Now this folder will be referred to in Houdini as, okay, as $heap. So the folder where you place your Houdini file, your heap file, will be referred to as $heap. So always have this structure, heap, and then all your extra folders, okay, put it there. Yes. Yeah, just change the group. So select, so double click on IMG, turn off your show sequence as 1 and 3 so that you can see all the, I have scrapers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So select one of them, let's say scraper 0. Okay, select scraper 0 after you turn off this checkbox here. If not, you will see 0 to 5 or 4, I think, yeah, in brackets. So switch off this checkbox here, and then select scraper 0 and hit accept. So what it does is it will fill up to show you the, where is it coming from, where is this image coming from. Okay, now why is it only applying on these two surfaces? Why? Yeah, because we selected 1 and 3. Okay, remember when we created this group, we said that 1 and 3 are the front walls. Okay, even after all the extrusion, it still remains as 1 and 3. Okay, then we texture We make sure it's texture by face and it's front walls, and then we quick shade it. Now you can always go back if you don't like the size of the windows, right? You can go back to UV texture and then you can scale it. Okay, maybe you want to have more windows, so you can squash it a bit. Increase the scale in X, in Y. Okay. Yeah, of course, if you rotate, then you will get something wacky. Okay. Now, if you look closely, you find that the texture is applied right to the edge, which is kind of unrealistic. So if you want to, you can always go back to the last poly extrude node. Okay. Okay, you can always go to the last extrude node and then create another poly extrusion, scale it, and then you can actually create a border or a side wall. And you can do the same for the other side. Poly extrude, transform the extruded front and scale it. Okay, now what I want you to do is to create another another 3 buildings of different size, and no need to be different size, different shapes. Right, so one quick way of doing this is to make sure you save first. One quick way of doing this is to copy all the nodes from after group 1. Right, copy this. So select everything, including the UV quick shade. Okay, after the group node, so select everything. Okay, Control C, Control V. So you push it to the side. Okay, copy all the nodes below group, and then copy and paste to the side. Okay, then you can come here and you can display Okay, my display has gone bonkers. Why is still showing the UV texture? Okay. Okay, so this is the first poly extrude. Okay, turn on the handle. You can change the extrusion height. So maybe this one. Yes. Okay, let me model some stuff. Okay, of course, for the second and third buildings, you can use another texture. Now, one other thing you can do is you can always create another group where it is made up of all the other walls and then color it. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, after the Yeah, after the last poly extrude, okay, you can drop down a group combine. So this is a new node to you, group combine, right? Right, this is to create other walls, another group. Okay, how does it work? Okay, look at the screen first, then you follow. Now you'll be lost. So after the last poly extrude, I drop down a group combine. So basically, it is a node that allows you to create new groups from previous groups. So I'm saying, okay, create a new group called, okay, I'll type in my new group called other walls. Okay, which is not equal. It equals all but, so all except front walls. Okay, so I'm saying that other walls is not equal to, means all the other surfaces, all the other primitives which are not inside this front wall group will be called other walls. Understand? So do that. So other walls equals all but. You must change this, if not it will be the same thing as front wall. So the node is called group combine. Before Houdini 16, actually group had all this inside one single node. Now they have separated it. Okay, so once that is done, we can refer to all the other walls via this new group. So we can color, for example, color. We drop down color. So color who? Color other walls with, for example, something which is light brown. Okay, and make sure it's primitive. The class is primitive. If you leave it as points, it will color everything. Okay, color other walls by primitive and choose a color. They do the same for the rest of the building. Yeah, you can copy paste. It would work. So let's copy these three nodes, these two nodes, paste it, and then apply it to the other side as well. Okay, you can change the color to something different, maybe gray. Okay, I'm just doing some of my own extrusion to create different kinds of buildings. Okay, so we have 4 different buildings now, and then what we're going to do is going to use the copy node, the copy stamp node, to choose for every single point. We're going to randomize, rather we are going to choose one of the copies to place onto the city base. So what we're going to do, so we're going to combine all this together with the switch node. Switch node. So connect your buildings all together to a switch node. Okay, so let me organize a little bit. Okay, so this is how the structure looks like. So you have your 4 buildings. Okay, the network is getting busy, so just be aware where you are. So this is 1 building, 2nd building, 3rd and 4th building. Combine them with the switch node. Okay, just bring them all together in a switch node. Now try to order them in such a way that it doesn't crisscross, the lines don't crisscross. Okay, it's a switch node. Basically, the switch node allows you to switch between the different inputs. So you have 4 inputs now. So if it's 0, you'll be showing this building. You go to the next one, you show the second. Go to the, if you select input 2, you show input 2. Input 3 is this building. Okay. Okay, so how do we make it such that the copy, because right now the copying is only selecting one of the input to the switch, right? So depending on where you place your input, what you selected, it will copy everything. All the buildings are the same, right? So we're going to use the copy node. Okay, go to the copy node, go to the stamp folder, the stamp tab. Okay, this is the copy node, copy stamp node. I'm at the stamp folder, and I'm going to switch on this stamp input, and I'm going to enter some variables, which you have done before. Okay, so stamp input, so let's call it maybe, let's call it type, building type. Okay, so what is the value of this variable called type? Let's use this x ptnum modulo 4. Okay, we are at the copy stamp node, at the stamp folder, switch on the stamp input, type in the name of the variable, and this is the expression. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, on the grid, before we deleted the grid, we had 900 points. Okay, we have 900 points because it's a 30 by 30 rows and columns, right? So there are 900 points. So the last point is 899. The first point is 0. Okay, so at ptnum refers to point number. So every one of these points on the grid has a unique point number. Okay, so if you look at your template, if you display that node before you pump into your copy node, and if you display the point numbers, you see every one of them has a unique point number. So what I'm saying is, at the copy node, take this point number, okay, take this point number, okay, let's say 306, right, 306 modulo 4, means 306 divide by 4, get the remainder. That's the meaning of modulo, right? So 306 divided by 4, what's the remainder? I think it's 303 first. Oh, my maths is getting away from me. Okay, let's not crack our brains. So 306, right? 306 divided by 4 is 76. So there'll be a remainder of 2. Okay. Three zero six divided by 4, you get 76, remainder 2. Yeah. Okay. So the modulo is actually looking for this 2. Okay, the modulo will give us the remainder. Alright, the percentage, it's called modulo. Alright, so then we will use this, the result of this modulo, the remainder, to choose which texture or which building. Right, we will pump this will be 2. So at 0.366 it will be, 0.306 it will be this building. Then 0.305 will be another building. So how do we do that? Okay, let me switch off the point numbers. Right, so we need to say stamp. So look at the copy node. So the copy node is copy 1 for me. Right, comma. The name of the variable is type. And then if I cannot find, if somehow the expression there is wrong, by default, just pick 1. So let's pick input 1 or input 0. Okay, so that's the expression. Yeah. So all this, the spelling is very important. So stamp. Okay, always when you have a function, open bracket, you must close bracket. Open inverted commas, you must close inverted commas. Then you have a comma between the variables. Okay, why is it called copy 1? Because this node contains type. Okay, so this switch is saying, go and look at this copy node. What is the value of type for that particular point? So then now when you display your copy, you should see that your city is filled with different kinds of buildings depending on the point number. Okay, so you understand how it works? So over here, you have point numbers. So let's verify, see whether point, where's 3, I lost my 306. Yeah, 306 is here, right? 306, by calculation, the copy stamp will give me a remainder of 2. If I do pt num modulo 4. So it should select building number 2, which is this guy. So let's see if it's as I expected. Okay, 306 is here. The moment of truth. Yeah. So it's building 2. Okay. So that's how you create randomness. Somewhat lah. Actually, it's not random because you can see there's a pattern. Okay. Okay, if you want to create a random node, you can, but you have to make sure the result must be an integer 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. So you have to figure out. So this is one way of creating. If you want to create another random node, let's say type, I create another variable called type2 for another variation. Right, I can enter, for example, floor. Yeah, random will give you random numbers from 0 to 1. But we want the result to be integer. That's the trouble. For example, this could be one solution. Floor will find the nearest integer of this random number times 4. Why times 4? Because this random PT num will give me a value from 0 to 1. So you multiply by 4, you get random number from 0 to 4. Okay. The floor will take the lowest integer. Okay, let's try this. So instead of using type, I'm using type 2. Okay, so type 2 as a new variable. Oops. So in the switch, I say use type 2 instead of type. Right, so it works. I have another variation. Okay, if you want, you can try that. So I'm just creating a different style of randomness. This one is not really random because it's actually a pattern. This will create numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, and then the next set of point numbers, it will be 0, 1, 2, 3 again. So there's a pattern. Whereas this will be more random. Okay? Okay, now I don't like to see now with the copy node, it shows you the template. Okay, if you don't want to see those blue lines, you need to drop down a null node and display it. Then you won't see the template. Okay. We take a short break. Come back at 11:05. Okay, moving on. Okay, you got all your 4 buildings. Okay, now let's create some variation in the height and the depth and the width of the buildings. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to create this using the same copy stamp concept. We're going to create a variation in the size. So for example, we're going to create a variable called okay, let's keep it simple, h for height. So let's create a random height. Okay, now if you look at the notes that comes up, so anything which you put inside the brackets, you will take the number, create a random number between 0 and 1. So it's very important. Rand will give you a value between 0 and 1. So if you want numbers bigger than 0 and 1, you have to build on it. You either multiply, like what I did here. Right, so this will give, by multiplying by 4, you get random between 0 and 4. Okay. Or there's actually another method which I want to introduce to you. So this is called fit 0, 1. So fit a number between 0 and 1, fit it to 2 new numbers. So let's say I want the height, the minimum height is 1 meter, and the maximum height, let's say I want it's 5. So there are 2 functions here. The first one is rand. Okay, so random is the first function here. Then the second function is fit 0, 1. Fit 0, 1 is the 2 bracket. So the second bracket for fit 0, 1 requires a number and then a minimum and the maximum. Okay, let's go on to the fit first. Floor was just now. Yeah, we'll explain the floor again if you want to. Okay, but now let's focus on this one. Okay, so how does fit work? For this variation of fit 0, 1, so a number that the first variable that you put in here, let's say you put a number 0.5. Alright, you will fit this 0.5 between a new range. So between 1 and 5, okay, you will find the middle, because 0.5 is in the middle. You will change, you will get 2.5 or 3, something like that. Okay, somewhere in between. So fit 0, 1 will refit a number here between this new range. Okay. So how do we use this h? So like right now where do we control the height of the building? Where is it? Where do we control the height? Transform in scale. So we say here, instead of using a fixed number of 5 meters, we say stamp. Look at the copy. Oops. look at the copy and find a variable called h. Okay, if let's say we don't have a number or something goes wrong, we use a scale of 2. Okay, so the last number here is the default. So the last number here, the 2 there, is actually explained here. The default value to use if it doesn't exist. If this h doesn't exist, or you made a mistake, you spell it wrongly, right, then this won't fail. It will always have a default. Okay, so if you enter, you find that if you display your result of the copy, which is the last one here, you will see that you have a variation in the height of the buildings. Okay. Now there was a purpose in actually doing all the transformation first and then doing the extrusion. Right? If you do the transformation at the end, right, after the switch, then it will affect the extrusion. The extrusion will be elongated. Okay? Because if you look at our building, right, this is the simple structure of the building. Right? We started with the box, we transform it, then after that we did all the processing for the texture as well as the extrusion. Okay? So this, by doing this in this step here right at the beginning, you don't affect the scale of the extrusion. Understand? Alright, so let's do the same thing. Let's repeat the same thing, but for the scale in X and Z. Okay, so let's have another variable called, maybe called W for the width. Copy this, paste it. For the width, I want maybe a building between 0.5 and 1.2. Okay, I can adjust this later. And then we have another one for the depth. Okay, for the depth, let's say we have a building depth, thickness of the building, maybe 0.1 and 0.3. Okay, let's just try these values first. We can always come back and change it later. Okay, so create W and the D. After you have created that, go and apply the scale, the transform mode for your buildings. Okay, don't worry, you can always come back and change these values later. Okay, so let's do it here. So it's going to be here, the transform to rescale. So we can copy this, paste it. So instead of, okay, which one is the width? Oh, this one is the width, right? Oh, crash. Hopefully. Okay, so if this happens to you, Houdini will, just before it closes, it will say the last bit of information. So where do you find your crash file? So you can open and go to the $temp. Okay, always go and find the $temp, and you should see your last file there. So accept, still error, then no choice. To start all over again. Okay, sometimes the crash file works, sometimes the crash file does not work. Okay, so the rescale, we are scaling it here. So the width is actually this guy here. So stamp, copy one, open and close inverted commas. Right, so this is W. This is the depth. And this is the height. So when you do that, you can see that your buildings are random now in the size. Okay. Okay, now let's take it one step further. So instead of, if I don't like the maximum and minimum numbers that I've set, right, instead of actually going to find it in your copy note and go to the stamp and changing these numbers, I'm going to make these numbers controllable, this min and max. Okay, so I'm going to create something like a digital asset. So I'm going to put down a now node to be the controller for the size. Okay, put down a now node. Let's say you call it building customization, for example. Okay, remember last week we did digital assets, right? So now let's have some controls such that I can control the minimum and maximum height using numbers on this controller. Okay, so it's a now node. Let's go to edit parameter interface, make invisible the two nodes that are not important to us. Right, select them. Right, select after you hit edit parameters, right, over here. So you drop down a now node, go and select it, and then go to the gear and edit parameter interface. So you open this window here, hide the copy input and the cache input, make it invisible so that it doesn't appear. Okay, we need two numbers. We need the minimum and we need the maximum. So let's drag in a float vector 2. Float vector 2, this one. Just drag it and drop it here. Okay, let's call it height. Okay. So the label, you call it min, max, height. So let's put in our defaults of 1 meter and 5 meters. Okay, I'm at the channels. So I went to the channels tab and I key in 1 and 5 as a default. 1 and 5. Okay, the name of the variable, the name of the parameter is height, and I label it with this text. Then I go to the channels and I enter 1 meter and 5 meter as the default. Okay, now let's try this first. Then after that we just do the same thing for the depth and the width. Okay, so hit accept. So you have two numbers appearing in this custom now node. Okay, so how do we use this number 1 and 5? Later we're going to be able to change this number, right? So what we do is we'll copy, right click, copy parameter. So the minimum is this one, so right click, copy parameter. Then where is the minimum height? Where is the place where we store the minimum height? In the copy node, right? So you have to go to the copy node. In the stamp folder, the minimum height is this one here. So you need to go in here, select the number 1, right? Then right click, paste relative reference. Right, copy. Have you done the copy? Copy this parameter. Then go into your copy node. Your copy node, the minimum height is here, right? This time it was the number 1. So select that. Use your left mouse button, just drag and select that. Right click and paste relative reference. Okay, it's very hard to see the whole string. Okay, but basically when I paste relative reference, this is what is entered. So if you know what you're doing, you can actually channel reference open bracket / building customization, because that is the name of the now node. And the name of the minimum height is called height X. And actually, the other number is Y. Okay. One is height X and one is height Y. Okay, there's very little space to show everything, so I open this edit expression by keying alternate E. You will open this window for you to have a bigger space to work with. Okay, all I did was I copied this guy, pasted it over here, and changed the X to Y. So what I'm saying is, this variable where we use to control the height, okay, I say for the minimum and maximum, go to this now node here and find the number. Okay, and then if you do it correctly, you can hit accept. Right, then you'll be all keyed in nicely. So now when you go to your building customization, right, you can change these values. Okay, be very careful. Save. Alright. And you can change the number to, let's say the minimum height is 1.5. Then you can see your buildings growing a minimum height of 1.5. Then you can say, okay, I want 10 meters as the maximum height. Right? So you have buildings where you can control the min and max height. Okay? So if you understand, I want you to build 2 more lines for the min and max width and min and max depth. Okay, so let's build the control. I'm just repeating the whole thing. So I don't need to drag the new float. I can actually select this, Control C, Control V, change the name. Okay, change the channels. The minimum width is 0.5, for example. Maybe 1.2. Control C, Control V. This one is the depth. Channels, the depth 0.1, maybe 0.5. Okay. So copy the correct number, copy, and then go to your copy node. So width is this guy here. So you need to select this, right click, paste relative reference. Paste relative reference. Okay, it's very hard to show you everything in that tiny square. So basically what I'm doing is just and replacing the fixed numbers there with the new parameters. Okay, so the 0.1. That's indicated. If it's only a single float, then you will get sliding. If you use float 2, you will get numbers. Okay. Problems? So you rotate 1 degree, 2 degree. Yeah. Okay, so let's find a way to bring back the roads. Okay, make sure it's safe. So what we'll do is I want to find a way to combine the city base, right, back to the buildings. Alright, so what I'll do next is to okay, so we have the roads. Which is here, right? This is the city base, right? So what we'll do is we'll drop down a subdivide to have more divisions. Do a subdivide after the paint roads. Okay, we just leave it at subdivision of 1 first. I mean, with a depth of 1. Okay, then we use the same we copy the group expression node. Okay, but this time we want to have a smaller area for the roads. So instead of any number which is bigger than 0, we'll just put in a value, let's say 0.6 for the moment. So we have a smaller area. Right, so if you look at your screen, if it's 0, okay, wherever I paint for a long time, the more you paint, you have larger values, right? So the edges will have values which are lesser than 0.5, for example. Right? So let's say if I put 0.5, you find that your selection is smaller. Right? So let's color everything green, for example. Then another color. Just to color the roads. So we will color the roads dark gray, for example. So we color everything green first. Color all green. Then we color the roads group gray. Okay. So what did we do? From the grid, after we painted the roads, which looks like this. Okay, basically it looks like this because, right, the areas which are red will have values that are very close to 1. Okay, and then the edges where you painted a little bit, right, because the brush is soft, it's a soft brush, maybe you have values of 0.4 or lesser. Okay, so the other colors that you see here are telling you that these are the regions where there are smaller numbers, smaller values. The one which is red, bright red, is close to 1. So I'm saying for the areas which are close to the edge, right, I want to exclude them from this roads group. So roads bigger than 0.5, then only I put it into this roads group. Color everything green. Then for the roads group, the new roads group, I will paint black or gray. Okay, then after that, I will merge my city with the colored city base. Okay, merge. Right, so you have your city, right? The city on the left hand side, which can be controlled with this. Okay, merge it with your city base. Work. No color. No color because you didn't put color. You do this. F. Then this. But when you merge, there's error, right? Yeah, it works. What is it? Your building no color. Oh yeah, my building also has no color. Okay, now this is the problem that I explained to you last week as well. And on Thursday, remember, the merge node is very peculiar. It needs to make sure, you need to make sure the left and the right, there's no mismatch. Right, every time you have this warning, okay, then it will display differently. Alright, so for this kind of cases, where you have complicated attributes on the left, and you try to combine with something from the right, which has different attributes. Alright, so what you can do is, you don't use merge. Alright, so we create a null node. Okay, so this is the city base. So this one is your city which is colored, right? Your city which is colored, and it has your textures. So what you do is, you create another geometry outside. No, you don't merge together. This is the city base. So you say that this guy will object merge. Okay, tag object merge. So I say go and take the from my city base. Okay, and then you treat it as another object which you can actually put in a different material. Right, this is what you do. Right, so this one is just the buildings. So you display the buildings. Right, and this one is just bringing in the city base and displaying it. Okay, so this is one solution. So how did I do that? Okay, remember I modeled this, right? I modeled this, and then I ended it with a null node called city base so I can find it easily. So basically what I'm doing is just referring to this node from city base. So create a geometry node, put down an object merge, and merge it from, you need to go and find it. It's called procedural city, look for city base. Okay, if you want to change the size of the road, you can actually increase this number. Okay, to a bigger number. You find that your roads will have a smaller size. I mean a smaller width. But the trouble is it doesn't look like roads anymore. It looks more like a river. Okay, so why don't we just make it look like a river? Okay. Now one more thing I want just to show you. So because your city is copied onto this grid, right? So you can, if you alter the shape of the grid, let's say we drop down a mountain node immediately after the grid. Okay. So I'm showing you the mountain node. Okay, after the grid, drop down a mountain node, change the okay, let me get some numbers to work. Okay, increase the height. I want to create some hills. So maybe a height of 13 and the element size of 37. Okay, so when you do this, your city will be sitting on some hillsides. All right. Okay. Okay, next week I'll show you how to use this map. Where is it? Okay, we're going to use this black and white map to map in our city. Okay, next week, because we have run out of time.
Still recording?
Yeah.